Back with another video talking about the World Boxing Super Series, the super middleweight side real quick. We're going to get to the cruiserweight sometime this week. Hopefully tomorrow, Wednesday, or at least by Friday and the weekend, we could talk about, break down that tournament. That tournament is probably 10 times the tournament that the super middleweight tournament is as far as star-studded. Usually the cruiserweight is more of a European division, so it's a super middleweight. But it has a little flavor. You know, I'm talking about outside the tournament, overall in the division so far. But we're going to talk about the most likely upsets in this tournament, and on the super middleweight side. It's two fights that I think can be an upset, more likely to be the upset. I did a little film study from the other day, and then individually I'll break down these fights as they come on in September and October, the fall, and then the top of next year, January, February is the next step, and then May is the championship. You know, the championship fight. They fighting for $20 million in prize money. The Muhammad Ali Cup. Got one American in the tournament. Basically, European-based tournament. I'm glad they got Robert Brandt in there to be the American because they are fighting for the Muhammad Ali Cup, and Ali was an American. Let's get into it. Now, a lot of people probably going to criticize me for this. George Groves said he picked Jamie Cox because he was domestic rival, but more important, he picked him because he was the easiest guy in the field. And the reason he probably thinks Jamie Cox is an easy guy, and I did my homework on this kid, is the simple fact is Jamie Cox used to be a welterweight. He had a lot of trouble with the law, you know, in the courtrooms. He's been injured on and off, and he's jumped up from welterweight to light middleweight. And I'm not sure if he fought at middleweight, but now he's a super middleweight. I've seen him spar with Kell Brook. I've seen a few of his fights, and I'm very impressed. And one of the reasons I think that Jamie Cox can upset George Groves is more an indictment on George Groves as the fighter. George Groves is overconfident. He was overconfident going into the Froch rematch. He was overconfident going into the Badou Jack fight on a Berto Mayweather undercard. He thinks he's a better fighter than he actually is at the moment. He's a guy, after the first Froch fight, we thought was a rising star. Be honest. We thought he got jerked, and then he got knocked out easily the second time around. But he's very overconfident. He thought he was preordained to be a world champion after the Froch 2 fights, but he wasn't. And he had I think he broke his jaw in his last fight, or had a jaw injury, and that's something to look for. Jamie Cox is a good fighter. I think he's been waiting so long for his time that George Groves is going to fight the best Jamie Cox. I'm not saying that I'm picking this to be an upset. This is just the most likely to be upset out of all of them. I think this fight has the makings to be the upset of the super middleweight side of the World Boxing Super Series tournament. And Jamie Cox has some pop. He got some hand speed. He got some boxing ability. He got some skills, and that's something to look out for. If George Groves thinks in his mind that this is an easy fight, and we know from George Groves' history that he's overconfident, he overlooks opponents, this is the fight. You want to put your pounds or your cash or your yen or your euro, whatever you want to call it, on one of these fights, it's absolutely this fight as you want to put your money on. Trust me. And then this fight, the Jürgen Burnham versus Robert Brandt. I know I butchered Jürgen's name, but he's a guy that had a shoulder injury versus Nathan Cleverly. He was trying to, he had to retire. It looks to me, I've seen a small bit of the fight that I've seen, that he was getting the best of, Cleverly was getting the best of him at times. And he was painting his face up, and I think he injured his shoulder, and he was in talks to make the Cleverly fight happen again. Then this tournament came calling. So for one, he's cutting down, 7 pounds to get to super middleweight. Okay, from just fighting at light heavyweight with Cleverly, I think it was a light heavyweight. So he's a big guy, and he's a guy nobody picked. Chris Eubanks Sr. didn't pick him for his son. Callum Smith didn't pick him, and George Groves didn't pick him. You know, he's a solid fighter. I think he's been beat a few times, 3 times. Robert Brandt is a middleweight that took an opportunity to move up 8 pounds. You know, I'd love to see Caleb Plant in this tournament, but it didn't happen. I think Caleb Plant would have had a good chance to be up there as one of the favorites. I don't know why he wasn't mentioned in this tournament, but he'd have been a good thing. But this is a good opportunity for Robert Brandt. If you wonder why Robert Brandt is even in this tournament as a middleweight, he was the mandatory for Ryota in the Dime fight. But Ryota got robbed in his home country by the Dime, and Brandt had to wait another 6-7 months again for a shot. So he took a shot at this tournament moving up 8 pounds. So most people see him as the weakest link. You know, one of the weakest link, but nobody picked him though. George Groves didn't pick him. Callum Smith didn't pick him. Christian Sr. didn't pick him because the factor of it being unknown. You ain't gonna have to go to America and fight him. Trust me. If it's up to venue space, I don't know how the venue was going. You didn't have a following other than Minnesota, but he scored a highlight reel knockout. He's with Derrick James, Earl Spence Jr.'s trainer, and I think he's the dark horse. I watched him fight a little bit. He's gonna try to seize this opportunity similar to what Andre Ward did. Not saying that he's Andre Ward, but he's an unknown. And I think a lot of people think this Yerke and Burnham dude's going to win because he's a bigger guy. I think Robert Brandt is going to really take this shit serious and outbox him. I think he's the dark horse to win this tournament for America. You know, he's an unknown, but none of these guys are invincible. But those are my two potential upset